The day that an executive leaves a company, voluntarily or through a layoff, through an acquisition, a clock starts on their ISO options. Most executives, they don't know that the clock is running until it's already expired, and by then the decision has been made for them. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what happens to your ISO options the day that you leave a company, why the 90-day window is the most time-sensitive decision in equity comp space, and what to examine before you hand in your notice. Let's start here. ISOs carry a post-termination exercise window, and it's governed directly by the Internal Revenue Code, not by the company policy. So when an executive or an employee separates from a company for any reason, they have 90 days to exercise their vested ISO options while preserving the preferential tax treatment that made those options valuable in the first place. 90 days is the maximum that the IRS allows for ISO status to survive. Now, a company can write a shorter window into that stock option agreement, like let's say 60 days or 30 days, but they cannot extend it beyond the 90 days without triggering an automatic conversion to an NSO treatment, or non-qualified stock options. Some companies have moved toward longer exercise windows, but those apply to the NSOs only. The ISO tax advantage is forfeited on day number 91, regardless of what the plan says. After that window closes, the options either expire entirely or they convert to NSOs. That conversion matters. The spread at exercise is now ordinary income rather than the potential capital gain. The window is not a grace period. It's an entire window, and it starts at the last day of employment, not on the last day that the employee thinks about it. This is where most executives realize the decision is harder than it looked on paper. Exercising ISOs requires capital. The grant was free. Converting it to actual shares is not free. So in this case, the executive has to write a check at the strike price to purchase the shares. And for a meaningful position, that number can be significant and it has to come from somewhere liquid. Then there is the AMT layer. The spread between the strike price and the fair market value at exercise is not ordinary income, but the IRS runs a parallel tax calculation that includes it. So if that calculation runs higher than the regular income tax liability, the executive will owe the difference on the gains that they have not realized from shares that they may not be able to sell yet. And in a private company, there's no market to sell it to. The executive may be writing a check to purchase shares, carrying AMT exposure on paper gains and holding an illiquid asset with uncertain timeline to when it's going to be liquid, all while managing a career transition. Now that's a decision that the 90-day window asks for, under pressure with a clock running. The executive who navigates this well, they run this analysis well before the separation date, not after. The questions to get answers to while still employed are this: what is the strike price relative to the current fair market value? If the options are underwater, the exercise decision is straightforward. If there's a meaningful spread, the decision requires real analysis. The second question is, what is the tax picture in the year of the exercise? Exercising ISOs in a year where income is already elevated, it compounds that AMT exposure. So a planned separation in a lower income year changes the math substantially. Third question, what does the company's equity structure look like? In a private company, understanding the likelihood of a liquidity event determines whether the shares being purchased are worth the capital and tax risk required to hold them. These are not questions to answer in the final 2 weeks of your employment. They belong at the beginning of the transition conversation, before the notice is handed in. So, 90 days, one decision, an asset that took years to accumulate. The people who lose this window, they do not lose it because they made a bad choice. They end up losing it because nobody ever told them that the clock was running until it was already expired. That is a problem that can be solved, but only before the separation date, not after. If you're inside a company that has ISOs and a career transition is anywhere on your horizon, this is a conversation to start having now. Drop questions in the comments or share this with somebody that's navigating a transition who has equity and maybe they haven't fully examined this.